Hello everyone, it's Mr. Brown again. It's doing chapter 8 of Emil and the Detectives. As if you're listening to the story, you'll know that he has followed a gentleman on the tram, and his grandmother and his grandmother's and his cousin are waiting for him at the flower stall where they had arranged to meet already. So we're going to see in chapter 8, it's called The Boy with the Motor Horn. And that would suggest perhaps that there's going to be a new character introduced this chapter, and we'll see who that might be. So chapter 8, The Boy with the Motor Horn. The man in the bowler hat got off the tram at the first stop after it turned out of Kaiser Avenue into Trottenau Street. Emil immediately picked up his suitcase and the bunch of flowers, murmured another thank you to the man who had paid his fare, and got off too. The thief walked in front of the tram, crossed the lines, and proceeded to the other side of the road. When the tram had moved on, Emil saw him standing on the opposite pavement, hesitating, and then he went up some steps to a terrace outside a cafe. Emil's next move had to be cautious, like a real detective following a suspect. He glanced about him quickly and noticed a newspaper stand at the street corner. It would give him just the right sort of cover, and he hurried over to it. He put down his heavy case, took off his cap, and considered what to do next. The man had taken a seat close to the railing, looking down onto the street. He was smoking a cigarette and appeared very pleased with himself. Emil was disgusted to find that a thief could have all the fun, while the person who had robbed was in such trouble. It made him furious that he, and not the thief, should have to hang behind a newspaper stand, and it didn't make him feel any better when he saw the man ordering a drink and lighting another cigarette. But it would be worse still if he got up to go, for there would be nothing for it but to snatch up the suitcase and chase after him. As long as he sat there, Emil had only to stay where he was, and that he would do even if he had to stay until his beard sprouted. But long before that, of course, a policeman would stop and ask him what he was up to. Loitering, he'd say, suspicious behaviour, and probably, you'd better come along with me, and quietly, or I'll have to put these bracelets on you. These miserable reflections were interrupted by a motor horn which honked loudly just behind him. It made him jump, but when he looked round, there was only a boy standing there laughing. "All right, don't get the wind up," he said. "It sounded as though there was a motor right behind me," Emil said. "Silly chump, that was me. Can't belong round here, or you'd know that. I always carry a motor horn in my trouser pocket." "Everyone knows me and my motor horn." "I live in Neustadt," Emil explained. "I've only just come from the station." "Oh, up from the country," said the boy. "I suppose that's why you're wearing those awful clothes." "You take that back," said Emil furiously, "or I'll knock you down." "Keep your hair on," said the boy with the motor horn good-naturedly. "It's too hot to fight, though if you really want to, I'm willing." I don't especially," Emil said. "Let's put it off. I've no time now," and he glanced quickly up at the cafe to make sure that Mr. Grunteis was still there. "I should have thought you had plenty of time," the boy retorted, "hanging about here with your outside suitcase and that great cauliflower. You look as though you were playing hide-and-seek with yourself." "I can't say you seem in too much of a hurry to me." "As a matter of fact," said Emil, "I'm keeping my eye on a thief." "What?" exclaimed the boy with the motor horn. "A thief? What has he stolen, and who from?" "From me," said Emil, feeling quite important again. "He took £7 out of my pocket while I was asleep in the train. I was bringing it to my grandmother here in Berlin. After he'd stolen it, he left our carriage and got into another one further down the train. But I saw him get out at the Zoological Garden station, and I've been following him ever since. He got on a tram, and now he's sitting over in that cafe. Look, that's him, looking as pleased as anything with himself. That man in the bowler hat." Gosh, what a lark, said the boy. Just like the pictures. What are you going to do next? I don't know, Emil admitted. Just keep on following him. There's a policeman over there. Why don't you go and tell him about it? He'd look after him for you, all right. Oh, I don't like to do that, Emil confessed. The police at Neustadt may be after me by now for something I did at home. I see. And Grandma will be waiting for me at Frederick Street Station. The boy with the motor horn thought long and hard for a minute, and then he said, Going after a real thief and catching him would really be something. I think I'll help you if you don't mind. Oh, well, I'd be awfully glad, Emil replied warmly. That's settled then. By the way, my name's Gustav. Mine's Emil. They shook hands, liking each other tremendously. We must get busy, said Gustav. It's no use just standing about here. We might lose the blighter. Have you any money left? Not a bean. Gustav gave a little toot on his horn, because as a rule that helped him to think, but this time it didn't. What about getting some of your friends to help too, suggested Emil. Good idea, cried Gustav briskly. I've only got to go honking around these streets and the gang will come tearing along to see what's up. Go on then, said Emil, and don't be long in case that chap moves on. I should have to follow him if he did, and you might not be able to pick us up again after that. Right you are. I'll be as quick as I can, said Gustav. Trust me, he's eating an egg now, so we can't be leaving just yet. Cheerio, Emil. Gosh, I'm looking forward to this. It's going to be smashing. And with that, he dashed off. Emil felt much better after that. Of course, it was bad luck about the money, but it could have happened to anyone. Having friends now to help him made all the difference. He kept his eyes resolutely on the thief, who was plainly enjoying the meal, paid for, no doubt, out of the money Mrs. Tischbein had worked so hard to earn. Emil's only fear now was that he would get up and go before Gustav came back. However, Mr. Grunteis obliged him by remaining at the cafe table, though if he had had the slightest idea of what was being prepared for him, he would probably have ordered a private plane, if that were possible, to get him away. 10 minutes later, Emil heard the horn again and looked over his shoulder. Quite 24 boys were coming down the street towards him, headed by Gustav. Halt, he cried as they arrived at the newsstand. How's that, he said to Emil, grinning all over his face. Gosh, it's great, said Emil, giving Gustav a delighted dig in the ribs. Well, chaps, this is Emil from Neustadt, Gustav then announced, and that's the rotter who stole his money, over there, sitting by the railings, in a black bowler hat. It'd be a nice thing if he was allowed to get away with it, so it's up to us. OK? We'll catch you all right, Gustav, said a boy in horn-rimmed spectacles. That's the professor, said Gustav, and introduced Emil to each of them in turn. Now, let's get a move on, said the professor, and the first thing is to see what money we've got. Each of the boys turned out his pockets and threw all the money he'd got into Emil's cap. One very small boy, whom they called Tuesday, had a whole shilling, and was hopping from one foot to the other with excitement, because he was the one to count the money. We've got 5 shillings and 8 pence, he reported. That's our funds, and we ought to divide it amongst the 3 of us, in case we get separated. Right-o, said the professor, so he and Emil were given 2 shillings each, and Gustav took the remaining 1 and 8 pence. Thanks awfully, said Emil. I'll be able to pay you back as soon as we've caught him. So, what do we do next? I wish I could get rid of my suitcase and these flowers. They're a frightful nuisance when I run. Give them to me, said Gustav. I'll take them over to the cafe and leave them at the counter, and I'll take a good look at our man at the same time. Mind how you go, said the professor. If the scoundrel finds out he's being followed, it'll make things more difficult for us. What do you take me for, growled Gustav, and off he went with Emil's things. That chap's face is a sight, he said when he came back. Your things will be okay there, Emil. We can pick them up again when we feel like it. I think we ought to have a council of war, said Emil, but not here, with all these people looking on. Let's go to Nicholas Square, said the professor. That's quite near. 2 of us can stay here to keep an eye on the chap, and we'll have 5 or 6 scouts along the road. They can relay any news along to us in no time. If he moves, we'll all come dashing back at top speed. Leave it all to me, said Gustave. I'll stay here and keep watch, he told Emil. Don't worry, we won't let him get away. You'd better get a move on. It's gone 7 already. Gustav had the boys organised very quickly. The scouts went to their posts along the street, and the rest of the gang, led by Emil and the professor, ran off to Nicholas Square. So that leads us to chapter 9, The Detectives Assemble. And I'll read that for you tomorrow, and it will be up on the channel this time tomorrow evening. Have a lovely evening, stay safe, stay at home, and I'll speak to you tomorrow. Okay, bye-bye.